Yes, guys, how you doing? Welcome back to the Spurs Talk Show. I am Sean Butler. Bugsy Malone is in the other room, getting ready for night naps time, and it is has been a long day. It's been a very long day with old Bugsy Malone being the little terror that she was on today's Tottenham walks. Supposed to be one take Tottenham. Apologise about that. It became three take Tottenham because she does her own thing. She's the star of the show, but she's not around tonight. So hopefully we can get into some data science. How about that? Right. This is going to be data heavy, but I'm going to try and keep it as lighthearted and skip through some of the stuff as best as possible. Give you the snapshot, give you the picture of what I'm trying to do here. And this is something that I built out before shenanigans, right? And so I think some of the data might not include the end of last season. It certainly doesn't include, I don't believe, any of the transfer spend from the summer and obviously January. That stuff's too early data. It also doesn't include the revenues and things. If there are any revenues, I forget. There's about 50 pages, right? 50. I know it sounds like it's going to be exhausting. I promise you, like I say, it won't be. I'll get through the tedious bit. I'm looking really for trends, but I want to show you why it is that I believe that there's more to the story than just, our trophy drought is down to one man. I think that, for me personally, the idea that, I've said 1,000 times, right? I personally think, guys, that the idea that you can simplify something as complex as success or failure and put it, the root cause of it, put it all at the feet of one particular person or one particular decision maker or one particular factor, I think is a stretch. And I think that there's a tendency for people in life to look for simple answers. And I also think there's a tendency for people to look within and not necessarily consider things that are outside of the controllables of the conversation, the debate, the topic, whatever it might be. Not just about football, but I think about anything in life, right? Like, why is it that I'm not losing weight? Why is it that my boss doesn't promote me? Why is it that the economy is messed up? Why is it that we rely on fossil fuels? Why, whatever, right? Like, these things are complex beasts. Brexit, take your pick. Political stuff, economical stuff, scientific stuff. Doesn't matter what the topic is. If you try to simplify these things down to one root thing, then I think that you end up missing a boatload of various contexts. And as I say, on this channel, we try to bring in contextual analysis. I enjoy doing it. This might not necessarily be for you if you don't like data, if you don't like, as I say, like meat on the bones. And I'm not going to get into all of the specifics around transfer policy. This whole purpose is not trying to answer the question of why it is that Tottenham have failed. It's more around just looking at the things that I believe to be part of the conversation that I don't think are necessarily referenced a lot of the time. Now, you might immediately think, oh, this is going to be Sean's attempt to defend Daniel Levy. And it's not, because within this data, there's a lot of acknowledgement that it's not just about money in football. Because I think I'm going to show you the data around the trends in trophies. And over the last 75 years, right, I've gone through all of the different teams, looked at everyone's success, who lifted what trophies when. It's not 75 years in the case of the League Cup, because the League Cup, I think, only started in 1962. But in terms of domestic trophies, so I haven't gone to the trouble of going into European stuff, because then you have to factor in hundreds of other football clubs from around Europe, and then I haven't got time for that. So it's just looking at the FA Cup, the League Cup from when it started until now, and also looking at the league, the Premier League and the old Division 1, with the intention of trying my best, I guess, to figure out what is... Wait, are we live? Are we live? What's going on here? Am I live? Hang about. Can everyone see me? Have I been talking to myself? We are live. Okay, there's something going on with my... there we go. There we go. It's all catching up. The comment section is not catching up on my StreamYard, so I might not even be able to see everyone's comments coming through. But there, it's starting to catch up now. We're good. So like I was saying, right. So first and foremost, I hope you're all happy enough doing the things you love. Second of all, smash the like button if you enjoyed this sort of content. Hit the notification bell. Drop the comments throughout. I'll do my best to bring them up if I can. And also, I thought, oh, well done, Butler. You've been talking to yourself for the last 5 minutes. I can't see if there's subscribers. Sorry, if there's people that are watching. I can't see any of the numbers regarding who's live, who's here, who's not here. I don't know what the hell's going on with my screen. Oh, there we go. We're back in now. I can see it all now. Much better, much better, much better. Anyway, where were we? So the purpose of this is to go through some data, right? Looking at the trophies, looking at the trends, and I think you'll see that back in the day, before there was some massive changes, that there was a higher distribution of success, right? There was more people that were going to that would have more chances of winning success in all competitions. And then as time went on and there was influences of money coming into football primarily, then you'll see a fewer and fewer people that get to win the trophies, and some obvious common denominators that are outside of necessarily just the poor leadership of one man in any of these particular clubs. And also that there's other things that are common denominators as well. And we'll come to that as the thing goes on. And like I say, this is not a defense of Daniel Levy, because actually 2 or 3 of the areas that are common factors of successful teams, such as leadership figures, like kind of figureheads, if you like, and also the kind of nurturing of a youth system, primarily youth system, actually, believe it or not, is actually very, very influential in teams that kind of harvested success over long periods of time. But also figureheads, like a big sort of captain of the ship for long periods of time, usually falls through into success as well. So we're going to look at all that stuff, and hopefully I'm going to bring in some data. Hopefully I won't be too boring for you guys, but I just wanted to get it out there, because I say all this stuff a lot, and obviously without the data to kind of back it up in debates and things, sometimes people can just say, oh, Sean's just saying that shit because he defends Daniel Levy. It's really not the case. This is just why I feel like there's more to the story than just Daniel Levy not being a good enough owner. And I think that, as I say, there's other sort of commonalities here, whereas I've said this before, if Daniel Levy is the only reason why Tottenham don't win trophies, then does Aston Villa have a Daniel Levy? Does Newcastle, does Everton, does Wolves, does Leicester, does Leeds, does Derby County, does Nottingham Forest? All of these teams that you'll see in a moment used to be just as successful, or nearly just as successful, as Tottenham over the last 6 or 7 decades, and yet they don't win them either. And so why is that? That's what we're trying to figure out. That's why I was trying to figure it out. Anyway, before we get into it, guys, let me see what's going on. We've got Chris Wood, new member. Thank you very much for your support, Chris. I really appreciate you, mate. Hopefully I'll get to meet you on Thursday for the fan show. Although actually, guys, that might have to be rescheduled this week, because I have to go to the hospital to see someone. So I don't know if I'll be back in time. But guys, smash the like button. Also, I never forget to plug this. If you guys prefer this stuff, you can still watch it. But if you prefer this stuff in Spotify or podcast format, then this and all of my uploads, all of my Tottenham transfer news views, includes all that stuff, they're always uploaded to Spotify, either as soon as I've uploaded it to YouTube, or in the case of live streams, shortly afterwards. So if that is your thing, then get over to Spotify. I've only got 250 odd followers on Spotify, so smash the follow button. The link's in the description. Also, I'll be bringing back Sean Butler TV very soon. So if you're interested in the financial stuff, side of the game, all that jargon, all that stuff, then you can also find that over there. Looking forward to seeing you over on the Sean Butler TV. I'm not going to, in the interest of time, guys, I'm not going to sit there and say hello to everyone. I'm just going to say right now, giant hello to everybody. Let's get into it, right? So, and I'll get my face in this. So I'll keep my face involved. Here we go. Let me get rid of Chris. Thank you very much, Chris. I'm not trying to get rid of you, just trying to remove you out of the way. Where's your thing? Here we go. Bang. Beautiful. If you can see me still in the bottom corner, it's a little bit of not really good enough, is it? I need to get myself somehow bigger and better. Anyway, basically, this is the argument about Daniel Levy, right? Especially when it comes to trophies. On one side, you've got the Levy-outers saying the point of elite sport is to win trophies. Tottenham used to win trophies. 1 trophy in 24 years is failure. Accepting failure is a loser mindset, pure and simple. I'm not sure if that entirely summarizes you if you are a Levy-outer, but that's generally speaking what I hear. And the opposite side of the coin, which I've entitled Levy enablers, is 1 trophy in 24 years is absolutely awful. No one can argue that, but it's not just Spurs and it's not just Levy. Plenty of other teams that used to win trophies no longer win either. Money has changed the game, and is why real common denominator for what, and is the real common denominator for why so few succeed and so many fail. Now, remember, guys, I made most of this, in fact, all of it, way back, and I haven't even had time today because of Bugsy Malone to actually look through and see if it even makes sense anymore. So I'm going to be going through this for the first time in 10 months, like you are. So this is the kind of the attempt here, I guess, is to show you the data from domestic trophies from 1950 to 2024, so about 75 years. And then also we're going to be looking at we're going to break it down into 25-year segments, 1950 to 74, 1975 to 2000, 2000 to 2024, to give you some kind of easier digestible chunks. We're looking at the commonalities of consistent successful teams, analyzed to understand what is required and why previously successful teams are no longer are, and how new entrants have broken through. and then a little bit at the sort of Tottenham's history as well towards the end. I think I'm not sure if I actually got around to doing that final part. So let me get rid of myself for a minute here. Let me know if you really want to see my face. Otherwise, we can keep it kind of slideshow-esque. But here's the kind of way that I've broken this down, right? And sort of I've made some assumptions here. You may or you may not agree with the way I've sort of written this down, but this is what are the kind of presumptions that I'm going on. League title of the three is the hardest to win. You do have to play everybody twice, home and away, 38 game test. It has the least variance, and again, variance with a CE, not a TS. Things like you don't get, if you get bad refereeing decisions in the cup, then you could be out, right? And it can't be any of your faults. Injuries, you hope that they even themselves out, but in the cup competitions, depending on if you have them at the wrong time, like Tottenham, for example, playing on Wednesday against Liverpool, horrible situation to face, and it basically might be really impactful. But over the course of the season, you would hope that everyone gets injuries and that that you don't necessarily have too much of a weighting against you relative to other teams over the course of the season. Doesn't always work out, but you would hope that's the case. Also, the luck of the draw is removed for league, and it's not for the cups. And also the venue, i.e., home or away. It's obviously the top domestic honour, and so that's the way that's why I think that the most sort of brownie points that you can get from a title in the domestic cups is the league title. FA Cup, you only have to get through 6 games to win it from the Premier League's perspective anyway. It's the more prestigious of the 2 cups. It's only played from January to May. Weekend fixtures are allocated for it, which is really important to remember because that's not the case for the Carabao Cup, right? The Carabao Cup has 7 games to win from the Premier League, depending on if you're in Europe or not. It might be 6. It's the least prestigious of the cups. B teams often used by the bigger teams. Played from August to February. Midweek games until the final. The variance on both the cups is still very impactful. And surprise winners, more surprise winners can happen and have happened in the League Cup as a consequence of the deprioritisation. Whereas in the FA Cup, it's less likely. But again, as you'll see, it's surprise victories and winners can happen. One of the things you'll come to in a little while, guys, is the story of those teams like Swansea and Portsmouth and Middlesbrough, and the teams that won those cups in that 25-year period that we're kind of analysing for Daniel Levy's analysis. Those teams that did win, that are in that bucket of 6 teams, they are... We've got their kind of their story, their kind of progress through to the final, and I think you'll see that there's a couple of exceptions, but generally speaking, they didn't really come up against too many of the bigger teams. And what you'll see about Tottenham, one of the reasons why Tottenham don't win success anymore, it's a really interesting stat that Tottenham actually have the highest amount of Premier League draws in the history of the competitions over that 75-year, or not Premier League draws, top tier draws, top league draws over that entire period. So it's interesting. Let me get rid of myself one more time. This is the most successful clubs. When I say that sort of stat, like, the most successful teams in England lose or fail, I guess, more often than they succeed. I'm basing that off this data. Essentially, depending, you can sort of pivot and flip this around as much as you want. But in total, and this is not including 2024 numbers, Liverpool have won 69 trophies. Manchester United have won 68. Arsenal 49 in total. Manchester City 35, Chelsea 34, Tottenham 26, Villa 25, Everton 24, Newcastle 14, Forest, Wolves, Blackburn, Sunderland, Leeds, West Brom, Sheffield Wednesday, West Ham, Leicester and Huddersfield make up the rest. And that is the sort of top 20 teams in terms of success. And here's the stat I want you to get you out, sort of get us out of the traps here. Of all the 5 teams that have won, 85.5% of all trophies since Daniel Levy, of all the teams, 5 teams have won 85.5%, and those are the same 5 teams that have been the most successful in the history of the domestic game. So it's not just about recency bias. When I say that those same 5 teams have won, I think it's 90% now of all trophies since Daniel Levy's been in charge. Those same 5 teams that have won 90% in the last 25 years are the same 5 teams that have been the most successful in the history of the game. And Tottenham are the 6th most successful team. So we're not far away, but like that's why I always say, like, it's the difference between we're the best of the rest and we don't quite break into that category, and the drop-off is pretty significant as you drop down from 34 trophies and 35 in the case of City and Chelsea. And obviously you'll see when we get to the data about how the money of football, the influence of money came in, and these guys were nowhere before Abramovich came in, and then obviously the Abu Dhabi group. So a little bit of a stats there for you, and this is where this is going to be death by analysis for you guys, but I hope you can hang around because we get out of this in a little while, right? So This is 75 years over, or 74 years oversight of football. The initial insights. There's 212 domestic titles that have been won. Only 38 winning teams in the history since 1951 to 2024. 17 of 38, i.e. 45%, have only won one trophy in that 75-year period. 16 of those 17 teams won a cup. So only one team that has only won one trophy won the league, and that was Burnley way back. 16 teams in 74 years have won the league. 10 teams in 74 years have won 5 or more trophies. 6 teams in 74 years have won 10 or more trophies. And only 12 teams have won all 3 competitions in 74 years. And they are 12 of the 13 most successful teams in the history of English football. So I hope that kind of hasn't been a little bit too exhausting for you guys, just as an initial oversight. I promise you I'll break it down. But in a nutshell, as I say, there's a hell of a lot of trophies there to win, 212, but it doesn't get distributed as far as you think it would. And if you look at the graph, you can see on the right-hand side here, nearly half, 45% have only won 1, a few have only won 2, and really, it doesn't, it's kind of like a logarithmic scale there, the way it shoots up towards United and Liverpool, Man United, City and Arsenal and Chelsea. And Tottenham are in that kind of like little bucket after there with a few teams right behind us in terms of Villa, Everton, Forest and Wolves, and Leicester and Leeds. But there's a big drop-off. Now, if you break it down over 3 different, let me get rid of myself again, get out of the way, Butler, you fat, bald bastard. If you break it down over 3 different sort of generations, if you like, 1950 to 75, 76 to 2000, and 2001 to 2023. Again, this is all 3 amalgamated cups, all like Premier League, FA Cup, and League Cup. Then you'll see this is the first trend I want you to notice, right? On the left-hand side, 1951 to 1975, look at the amount of teams that actually were part of that bucket of groups of teams that could win. So Tottenham actually won the most between 1951 and 1975 in 7 trophies. I think that was 2 League Cups, 4 FA Cups, and 2 league titles. Manchester United, Liverpool, and believe it or not, Wolves were the next up. Then after that was Manchester City and Leeds. But if you look at the frequency, right, I think there's how many there? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. There's about 25, 26 different teams there that have won at least 1, but up to 7 trophies in that 25-year period. As you move from 1976 to 2000, you'll see that you'll start to see the emergence. Well, Manchester United have taken over. Tottenham have dropped off. Tottenham have gone from 1st to 4th or 5th rather in the success category. Nottingham Forest make an emergence under Brian Clough, one of these legacy figurehead managers that we're going to come to a little bit later on. And you can also see Liverpool there shoot forward in that period under their guys, Bill Shankly, etc., who actually won the majority in 18 different trophies, the majority of them 10 league titles in a 24-year period. Quite phenomenal. But the big takeaway, though, is look at the amount of people, the amount of candidates that have won in that particular period. So if it's 25 or whatever it was in the first 25 years, in the next one there, it's what is that? 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. I think that is teams in the 76 to 2000 era. 87.5%. Oh, hang on, sorry. Here we go. What am I doing here? And then we move across to the most recent era, 2001 to 2023. As I say, apologies, I didn't get the 24 data in. I made this before that stuff was all finished. Then you can see the number of teams that have won in the last 23, 24 years. And this is, of course, is the Daniel Levy era, shrinks again. There's only 12 teams, I think it is. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 teams that have won anything at all. Tottenham is on that list. Leicester City sneak above us with 1 league title and 1 FA Cup. But again, you'll see the consistent themes of Manchester United, Liverpool and Arsenal always there like they were in the previous 3, and the massive emergence of Chelsea and Manchester City. And Chelsea and Manchester City were a big team in the 1950s and 1975. Not really anywhere. Only one league cup in the previous 25 years era. I'm not even sure. Yeah, Chelsea, I think, just snuck on there with 2 or 3. And in the previous era before that, again, Chelsea, only 3 trophies. So whilst they have been ever present in the success categories, if you like, over the last 75 years, really you can see 2 massive emergencies here, emerging trends. One is the fewer and fewer teams are winning trophies as time moves forward. And two is that the same 5 teams have always been there. Liverpool and Manchester City always jockeying for the top spot. Tottenham were a team way back before most of us were born, before most of our parents were born, depending on how old you are if you're watching this. And on top of that, a lot of these also ran teams that maybe were fortunate enough to pick up one trophy here or there over that kind of earlier period. It doesn't happen very often at all. I hope you guys, let me see if, by the way, throw some questions in, guys. If you do have any questions along the way, in the interest of kind of trying to keep on track here, because there's quite a lot to get through, I don't want to take too much of your time. Now, let's want to break this down a little bit. Just, I don't know if we can skip through this stuff as well, but just for the purposes of breaking it down so that it's not all complex and too much to go through. League titles, 74 league titles in the last 74 years, 16 winners, only 16 winners in 74 years. Between 1951 and 1975, there were 12 winners. Between 76 and 2000, there were 8 winners. And in the last 24 years, there's only been 6 winners. 1 new entrant, that's Leicester. In the previous, as I said here, 4 new entrants in the 76 to 2000 era that weren't part of the 12 winners in the 51 to 75 era. Let me get rid of my face. And 73% of titles since 1950 have been won by the usual 5 teams. 73%. So 3 out of every 4 seasons goes to either United, City, Chelsea, Liverpool, or Arsenal. Right? Pretty damning evidence, right? Pretty damning evidence. Let's move on to this is the league titles by era. As you can see, here's the data to back up what I've just said. Man City, United, Chelsea, Liverpool, Arsenal, and Leicester are the only teams that have won it in the last 24 years. And you can see that Forest, Villa, Blackburn, and Leeds won it in the 24 years before that. And there was other entrants from the 51-75 period. Tottenham were victors. Everton, Derby, Leicester. Everton, Derby, Leeds, Burnley, who were the only team, remember, to have won 1 trophy, and it happened to be the league, and that was way back in 1953. I think it was Ipswich and Manchester City. So I hope that I can skip past this stuff because I don't want to kill you all by too much data. But in a nutshell, 74 trophies, 25, 25, and 24, 16 winners, 12, 8, and 6 is how it was spread in terms of unique winners during that period. Let's move on to the FA Cup. In the last 74 years, 24 teams have won in 74 years. 14 teams have won it just once. 38 titles to 4 teams in 74 years. Only 4 teams took up half of that particular 74-year period over that period. And 49 titles, so 2 in every 3 titles have been won by, this is the FA Cup, have been won by 6 teams in 74 years. Now, obviously, Tottenham are one of those teams, as are Man United, Arsenal, Liverpool, Chelsea, shock horror, and Manchester City. Funnily enough, West Ham had some success in the FA Cup. 4 trophies. Newcastle United, Everton, West Bromwich Albion, Villa, Forest, Wolves, Leicester, Leeds, Ipswich, Wimbledon, Coventry, Wigan, Pompey, Southampton, Sunderland, Bolton, and Blackpool make up the difference. And as I say to you guys, as we go through this, I'm going to ask you those questions. What happened to all these other teams that used to win? Where's West Ham's success? Where's Newcastle's success? Where's Everton's recent success? West Bromwich Albion, Villa? Where are they? If it's all Daniel Levy's fault, then why aren't there bigger distributions of success around trophies that can be won by other teams? The fact that there isn't, to me, suggests that there must be something else to blame other than just what happens within Tottenham Hotspur. And again, this is just breaking down the same stuff by way of statistics. 28% won by the Big Five way back in 1951 when they had the biggest distribution. Look, you can see in the graph there, again, more and more teams win 75 to 50 years ago, then fewer between 50 and 25 years ago, and then fewer again between 2001 and 2024. Tottenham, unfortunately, not in that final bucket there for the last 24 years, which is an absolute disgrace. But why is it a disgrace? What's the rationale for it? Let me get a slurp on my Monday night cider. So this is why this is interesting to me. You might dial in. Go and get yourself a beer, or whatever your tipple is, or a coffee, if you're healthy. Get yourself, set yourself in, guys. We've got some more data to come through. But I'm going to skip past this stuff in a little while and move away from the trophies. I wanted to just make the point around what's happened with the FA Cup, what's happened with the Premier League. This is the last one. League Cup trophies, 1961. Obviously, the first League Cup was in 1961, so we don't have as much data to go on. 23 winners in 64 years. 11 teams have won it once. 4 teams have won it twice. 31 of the 64 wins, so half of all League Cup trophies, have been won by the usual Big Five. There's the list. Teams like Stoke, Swindon, QPR, Swansea, Middlesbrough, Oxford, Luton, Sheffield Wednesday, Blackburn, West Brom, Leeds. All these guys pop up. This team has this particular league has the biggest distribution in terms of the frequency and in terms of just the names. Most of the teams that only won it once won this competition because I guess it just is deprioritized by some teams as we move forward. And here again is the same trend. It's the same for all of the domestic trophies. Way back in 1961 to 1975, even though we're working with only 15 years of data versus 25 years for the second bucket and the 24 years going forward, you can see again there is more victors in. Actually, that's a lie. 13 winners, but over in 15 years back in the day. 13 winners in 15 years. So everyone wins it once and 2 teams won it twice. In the 1976 to 2000 period, 25 years, 14 winners. So 1 additional winner, but obviously as a percentage of the amount of trophies that there were, it is distributed fewer and fewer. And then in the last 24 years, only 8 winners. Manchester City, Liverpool, United, Chelsea, Swansea, Birmingham, Tottenham, Borough, and Blackburn. I hope that's not bored you too much. Let's get into some bit more interesting stuff here now, right? Variance in cups. This is the thing I always talk about, guys. Like I say it's more difficult to win a cup than it is. I say it's more difficult to come fourth in the Premier League than it is to win a cup. Not necessarily. It depends on who you draw, but in all likelihood, you can win a league without having to beat City, Arsenal, Chelsea, United, and Liverpool. But what I would say is that you can easily win a cup without having to get drawn against Premier League teams. And we'll see in a moment that stuff actually happens to a degree, a little bit more frequently when some of these smaller teams do actually pick up the trophies in the last 25 years. Here's a stat for you, though. Which team do you suspect gets drawn against other Premier League teams the most? Tottenham Hotspur get drawn against Premier League teams 38% of the time, more so than any other Premier League team, more so than any other team in English football. And that is across both competitions, I believe. It's not just the FA Cup. I think that is across the FA Cup and the Carabao Cup. Fulham second, 37%. Everton, 35%. Birmingham, Bristol, Millwall, Reading, who aren't even in the Premier League, poor teams. There's a reason why. They struggle maybe, or at least have a harder time getting the name on the list. I don't think Millwall won anything. I don't think Reading's won anything. I don't think Bristol City has won anything in that 75-year period. But Birmingham, I think, did. Anyway, so just an interesting stat, right? That Tottenham, we wonder why how bad, what's happened in the last sort of 25 years at least under Daniel Levy. But the Premier League goes back to 1991. Who gets drawn against the most Premier League teams? Well, it's Tottenham Hotspur. So it makes our job a little bit more difficult if that is the outcome. Now, let me press pause for a second. I've got a super chat here from my man, Blaine Devlin. What a man you are, Blaine. You're such a great supporter of the channel. I really love you, man. Not just my channel, the community, mate. You're a brilliant guy. I love you to pieces, buddy. This is like porn to me, Sean, tickling my inner economist. I love this stuff as well, mate, to be honest. But very interesting. Do you think that as a fan base, we have a higher expectation compared to where we should go, where we should be going by the numbers? I think the expectation, I would just say more of an understanding. Like, I just think that people, and I get it. I understand that not everyone cares about this data. Not everyone cares about finance. Most people don't enjoy that stuff. But I would just say that, like, the reason why I personally, I'm not a Daniel Levy sympathizer. I'm not a bootlicker or whatever the names are that are thrown to me. I criticize Daniel Levy, and you'll see me criticize him in a moment quite a lot when we come through to some of the other variables outside of finance, which is the first major factor as to why this trend has happened. There's other things. And I think that Tottenham have failed in many of those departments. Many of those departments are just as influential, in my opinion, as money. And so there's a lot of criticism. I think anyone that watches my channel frequently will know that I do throw him under the bus for lots of things that I think he's awful at. And one of the reasons why I'm not particularly Ange out right now is because I have absolutely no faith that Daniel Levy will have a new manager ready to come in the day that he sacks Ange. And so I don't really want Ryan Mason. And that's a massive red flag about Daniel Levy for you. So like I say, I'm just saying that if you want balance, if you want to be reasonable, it's okay to be upset with the fact that we're not winning enough trophies. It's okay to want more. It's okay to expect more. It's okay to say the stadium is bringing this revenue. We're bringing in money from Beyonce, all those things, which I applaud Daniel Levy for, because he's taken away the responsibility from just Tottenham fans to be the source of revenue that is then spent on the wages or the players or the whatever else that other clubs require their entire fan base to fund, or they have to go about it from different ways, like transfer strategy, selling their best players. Teams like Brighton, for example, who are brilliant at buying young players and have no problem selling them on. Look, it's fine doing that if you want to be a team that finishes 10th, like Brentford, Brighton, Bournemouth, Wolves, whatever. If you want to go to the next level, at some point you have to stop selling your best players, because you can't always have a conveyor belt of talent. It doesn't work that way. The world is smaller and smaller. With the advent of data, everybody should be now aware of all of the great talents that are coming up. I know that doesn't always work that way, but if you want to be the team that challenges City and Liverpool and all those guys, at some point you have to stop selling your best players and keep hold of them. And the problem for teams like Brighton in that regard is, and Bournemouth and everybody else, is that the rest of their business does not generate the revenue that their transfer trading does. And so by that proxy, if you're trying to keep hold of your best players, then you're not going to be able to get the money coming in from selling Caicedos and Lavias and insert superstar there. And so how do you then make that march towards the next level if you don't have supplementary income to do it, right? And Tottenham have massively screwed up in their transfer policy, and there's so much room for improvement in that regard. There's room for improvement, or at least over the years there have been, and we're starting to get it right in terms of the youth trading. But in terms of the distribution of responsibility for who it is that's going to bring in the revenue, I think that Daniel Levy should be applauded for the fact that he's asking Beyonce fans and NFL fans and go-karting fans to at least chip in a little bit of the money, because no one else is doing that. And I think it should be applauded. But that doesn't mean that I think that Daniel Levy gets it right in every department. I think he screws up massively, Blaine. What I would say is that this data, to me, should tell a story that it's a little bit more complex than just Daniel Levy's fault. And therefore, be a little bit more sort of, I guess, understanding that even if you had a new owner, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're going to win or be successful. It might mean that there's more ambition. It might mean that better people are put in place to do certain things that we are currently struggling in. And it might mean that there's a better tolerance for risk. All of those things I'm on board with. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the tide will change with regards any of the other things, the trends that I'm trying to present to you here. Really appreciate the super chat they made. It's very, very, very much appreciated. Where was I? Here is, let me get rid of my face again. Here is just 3 examples, right? Cup trends. So we're talking about variance. I'm talking about the cup draw. Like, how lucky can you be? Well, you can't be lucky in the league. You can't be lucky in the league. You have to play everybody twice, home and away. You can be lucky with injuries. You can be lucky with refereeing decisions to a degree. But the argument is always put up that it all evens out in the end. I'm not sure it does, but that's the argument that's presented. Whereas in cups, one bad decision, you're out. One horrible spate of injuries at the wrong time, and like Tottenham against Liverpool, you'd fancy us maybe not to win, but you'd fancy us a lot better if we happen to have Van De Ven and Romero and everybody else back for Wednesday, but we don't, so it's going to be more difficult. And unfortunately, that's just the way the cookie crumbles. Let's look at Portsmouth, Wigan, and Leicester in their pursuits of cups history, right? So Portsmouth in 2008, this was the FA Cup. They beat Ipswich Town in the 3rd round, Plymouth Argyle in the 4th round, Preston North End in the 5th round, Manchester United in the quarterfinals, I believe that is, and West Bromwich Albion in the semi-finals. And I don't know why I haven't got their final there. Oh, it was. They beat Cardiff. They beat Cardiff in the final. I don't know why I haven't got the scoreline. But so you can see that Portsmouth didn't play anybody of any real note. Not even, most of those aren't in the Premier League, obviously, apart from Manchester United. And they got a great 1-0 away victory, by the way, against Portsmouth. So not taking that away from them. I'm not saying that they got a lucky draw the whole way through, but it's pretty fair, pretty reasonable to get past Ipswich, Plymouth, Preston, and West Brom, and then playing Cardiff in the final. You take that all day long. Wigan, 2013. Bournemouth in the 3rd round. They got a draw, then they had to go away, and they won 1-0. Macclesfield Town, Huddersfield in the 5th, Everton away in the quarterfinals, Millwall in the semi-finals, and then obviously Manchester City in the final. But Manchester City in 2013 were not Manchester City of today. They were a team that had just been taken over by the Sheikh. I'm not sure. Can't remember the timeline there. But they certainly weren't with the obscene levels of spend that they currently are doing and currently have because of the City Football Group. All of that stuff was just the apple of someone's eye at the time, and a seedling of an idea. So to me, again, Wigan, right? People are saying, well, Tottenham got the same successes of same ratios of success of Portsmouth, Wigan, and Leicester. And then I'll show you where Tottenham's sort of failures have happened. In the last 5 or 6 years, we've had a horrendous track record of getting beaten by teams that we shouldn't be beaten by, considering our stage, our level in the Premier League versus others. But for the most part, when we get beaten by Premier League opposition. And even when we've won, we've had tricky runs to the final. And even when we've got to the final or the semi-final, we've always come up against one of those big five. And sometimes we won, but predominantly we've lost. And so it's just a little bit of context that people should remember, in my opinion, when we're going, well, why is it that Tottenham don't win? Why is it that Wigan can win? Why is it that Portsmouth can win? Why is it that Leicester can win? And again, put the data out there. People forget. People maybe don't know or don't remember. But there's the data, right? Wigan got a hell of a lucky draw. Obviously, they played Man City, as I said, but there wasn't particularly the same sort of level of team as they are today. Leicester City in 2021, the FA Cup. They played Stoke City in the third round, Brentford away in the fourth round, which Brentford were a good team then. They're probably about, not quite as good as Leicester, but still, Brentford away is always a tricky place, right? So I'm not going to take that away from them. Brighton and Hove Albion in the fifth round at home. Again, I don't think Brighton were quite the sort of level they're at now, or actually, arguably, I think Brighton have come off the ball, to be entirely honest. But this was before De Zerbi, and again, not a bad place, not a bad draw home against Brighton, and then Manchester United in the quarterfinal, and Southampton in the semi-final, and then the Chelsea in the final. So listen, in the fair and balanced and reason, I could have shown you all of them. I deliberately went out of my way to pick Leicester because that particular story is a little bit more competitive, a lot more competitive. Beating Chelsea in the final, always a great team. Beating Manchester United on the way. Man United weren't a shambles like they are today back in 2021. Brentford and Southampton, Premier League opposition most of the journey there. And so Leicester, fair play to them. Not only did they win the league, when most people say, well, that was a rebuilding year for everybody else, and well done to Claudio Ranieri. But that particular FA Cup run, they actually took on some of the best and handled it. So I don't take anything away from Leicester. What I find a shame, if you're a Leicester fan, is whilst you had 2 or 3 years of absolute joy as a Leicester City fan, and people like Jamie Vardy, the story of that man's life needs to be put into a film. It's incredible. In terms of what's happened since, Icarus flying too close to the sun, got relegated, spent a couple of years down there, coming back up, probably going to go down again. And so, I don't know, as a Tottenham fan, would you take Leicester City's last 10 years? Maybe, probably. But at the same time, once it's in the trophy cabinet and it's a part of a memory from a few years ago, now you've got to focus on the present day. And Leicester City fans are probably not going to be enjoying too much of their present and recent history ever since those wonderful halcyon days that they went through a few years ago. I've got another super chat. Let me press pause and bring myself back in to say very much, show my appreciation. Are Beyonce fans chipping in for the football or for Enix profits? No, they're chipping in. It all goes back into the stadium revenues that then comes back into the. It's under the commercial banner, under the commercial number of the revenue stream. So, Beyonce does absolutely all of that, all of the match day receipts, all of the events or whatever you want to call them. They all fall under the commercial banner on the revenue number, and so Beyonce fans are paying for Timo Werner's wages. How about that? If you like it, you should have put a ring on it. All the single ladies, pay Timo. Yeah. Anyway, let's move on. Thank you very much, Callum. I really appreciate you, my man. Really appreciate the super chat. Wigan got relegated that season as well, so Spurs on the rocks. Exactly. Who beat us in 2008? Manchester United. That was in the was that the League Cup when we got beaten on penalties, right? And Sir Alex Ferguson was still around. Is that right? Well, no. When was the League Cup final? We got to the penalties. We got to the final when we lost on. It was 0-0 and we lost on pens. We'll come to that in a minute. Anyway. And then just to finish off the kind of variant story, let me get me out of the way for a second here. I think we did. What am I doing here? I think we did Portsmouth already. Yep. We've done Swansea. We've done Wigan. I don't think I showed you. Oh, I didn't show you Wigan. So Wigan in the last 64. I don't know why I've done this reversed and why the colours are all weird. what's going on here? It must have been drunk or something when I did this one, but we're going back up. We're going up the chain now. They played Bournemouth, then Macclesfield, then Huddersfield, then Blackburn, and then in the semi-finals, Millwall, in the final, Manchester City. So Wigan had a lovely little run through as well, where I don't even think they played a Premier League team until they got to the final. And then Birmingham, who also did well in 2009-10 for the League Cup. They played Rochdale, Milton Keynes, Brentford, and then got a little bit trickier. Villa, West Ham, and Arsenal in the final. Now, I don't think Arsenal put out their strongest team in that final, I don't believe, from memory. But either way, well done to Birmingham. We'd love to see it. And as I say, Aston Villa were not the Goliath that they are now back then. And West Ham certainly weren't either. So I hope you can kind of just see the trend here that I'm saying, right? That not only are there fewer and fewer teams that do win, but those that do, outside of the top five, a lot of the variance, the luck of the draw, the luck of where you play, and I don't know the specifics of injuries and cards and refereeing decisions and stuff. Obviously, I'm not an eidetic memory type of guy, but I just hope that kind of puts some context and perspective onto where we're at. Now, if we look at Tottenham's exits from cups under Levy, thank you. What am I doing? Give it Spurs TV, Spurs Kings out of the way. Good to see you, though. Is that Ashmatic or is that Marlon? I'm not sure. Good to see you, buddy. Well, you got some questions here, I think. Let me have a look. What are we doing here? My bad. I thought we were talking about the FA Cup. I'm not sure what we were talking about. I think we were just talking about whatever the cups were when they won them. Spurs King. Sean, is it true ENIC will own the stadium if the club gets sold? No. Well, it depends on the structure of the deal, but no, I doubt it. I wouldn't I wouldn't see the point of any buyer buying the club and then having someone else own the stadium. But listen, stranger things have happened. It all depends on the price and it all depends on what the new owners would want. But like I say, guys, I'm always open-minded, right? Your mind should be like a parachute. It only works when it's open. I'm always open-minded to any outcome. Angie and Angie out, Levy and Levy out, new owners, shake in, shake, rattle and roll, private equity. I'll just judge it all based on what the story is at the time, what they can bring, what the rules are, if the rules are loosened, if the rules are tightened, multi-club ownership, what are the intentions, what are the ambitions of the people, how do they bring value, are they going to be better or worse than what we have? And like everything in life, man, things can get worse as much as they can get better. I'm not saying that they couldn't get better under an owner that has a different kind of relationship with risk, a relationship with money, but the rules just don't allow for the same sorts of outcomes as what you saw with Abramovich, what you are seeing with Todd Bowley. That whole thing was a specific nuanced circumstance that will not happen again. And Abu Dhabi, right, with Manchester City. It doesn't work that way. I personally think that if you want a new owner that's going to be able to run with what we've already got and also add value that we don't already have, I think the best way to do it would be to find someone who is a zen at multi-club ownership. I think that stuff offers so much additional value, but you have to get it right. And if you get it wrong, it can ruin everything. But if you get it right, once you get past the second club and you get to third, fourth, fifth, and it becomes like a template conveyor belt of plugging in new systems, and when you figured that out, like City Football Group have, and RB Leipzig and Red Bull and not Todd Bowley, Bill Foley and MSP Capital. There's loads of them out there. Not all of them get all of them right, but I think that Tottenham would be at the top of the pecking order. And as long as there was sort of structural relationships in the way that we weren't funding them at the bottom and they weren't funding us, but that ultimately there was shared learnings and benefits, and it gives you that access into those markets. Like, go and get a team in Argentina, go and get a team in Australia, go and get a team in Japan. So that primarily so that you can get access to the talents that's in those youth systems. Like, that's the main benefit for me. And without that, I think that there is little value that I can really see coming in from someone else bringing in, apart from just a different relationship with profit and with debt. And like I said before, the only way that really changes is if someone comes in and says, I don't care, I'll write off the debt of the football club, I'll pay off the 700 million, and then in so doing, you don't have to pay off the principal or the interest on the debt, and that guy can then kick that can down the road for miles away, and that essentially just loosens up like 50 million quid, 60 million quid, at least in the first 3 years, because new owners get an extension on the debt anyway, or an extension on losses. So then you could front load some more spend. But you also have to get your transfer policy right, you know, because Everton did exactly that under Mashiri, and look what happened there. Right? Absolute shambolic, shambles. Anyway, just quickly looking at Tottenham. So we looked at the other 5 teams there that won trophies, and most of those guys got through to the final or semi-finals without having to face against many of the Premier League opposition. Not really the case for Tottenham, right? If you look at Tottenham in the EFL, most recently we lost to Fulham on penalties. Nottingham Forest in the 3rd round in the year before, Chelsea before that, Man City in the final before that. Colchester obviously was a shame and a shambles. That was on penalties. Chelsea in the semi-final, West Ham, Liverpool, Arsenal, Chelsea, West Ham. You have to go all the way back to 2012 to see the next time that we're playing against a team that wasn't in the Premier League. I'm not even sure if they were. They might have been in the Premier League in 2012, to be honest. Norwich, I'm not sure. Stoke City, maybe they were in 2011. But look at that. You know, most of the time we're losing to Arsenal, United, Chelsea, Arsenal. Grimsby Town in 2005, that's 20 years ago, 18 years ago. So again, not saying that we shouldn't be beating these teams, but a lot of these teams in the last 15 years, how many times have we played? We've got Chelsea, 1, 2, 3, 4 in the last 24 years. Manchester City, once. Arsenal, 1, 2, 3 times. Manchester United, 3 times as well. No, twice as well. So like 10 of the last, well, I think that's about 10 of the last 24 years, we've lost to teams that are in that Power 5, right? So that's in the Carabao Cup, which is obviously a little bit easier. Obviously, there's the detail of what strength team did we put out, what strength team did they put out. And if you move across to the FA Cup on the right-hand side, then you have a similar sort of story, right? City, United, Chelsea, 3, Arsenal 4, Chelsea 5, United 6, United 7, Chelsea 8, Man City 9, Chelsea 10, Arsenal 11. I think there's 11 teams in the last 25 years that we've also been beaten by those big 5 teams. And the rest of them, for the most part, are also Premier League opposition. So, again, we don't usually get beaten by teams that are like, we don't usually get embarrassed. Obviously, Sheffield United was a poor one. Middlesbrough was a poor one. Norwich on Pens was a poor one. Palace, poor one. Twice we lost to Palace, actually. That's outrageous. I didn't realise that. But ultimately, what I would say here is that most of the time, guys, we're losing in a Premier League fixture, right? And as you've seen, Premier League seasons, in the cup, it's game over if you lose. But in the Premier League, you can sometimes, you can lose a game here or there. Even the very best, Man City, Arsenal, whatever, they can lose to the very worst teams in the Premier League every single season. It doesn't mean that they're going to derail their overall campaign, but those shock results can happen. In the case of Tottenham in the cups, it happens most of the time. I'd be far less forgiving if there was a higher preponderance of situations where we were losing against lower league opposition, but it just doesn't really happen. And most of the time, I'd say 50%, maybe 45% of those losses are against the same big 5 teams that have always been more successful than us, or the same 3 big teams that have always been more successful. And then as you're about to see, as we come in to the next section here, there is also a massive weighting towards City and Chelsea. And that only happened from 2002 when Abramovich arrived and when money changed the game. Again, this is basically just a summary of the data, the amount of trophies that could have been won, how many winners there were, the unique winners, and as I say, overall, only 16 unique winners in 74 years, over 212 different trophies. And that over that 25-year period, 12 teams won it, then 8, and then 6. Quite a massive. And trophies won by the big 5. Trophies won by the big 5. Here's the stat on the far right column over here. In the first 25-year period, only 33% of all trophies were won by the big 5. And then in the middle period, 1976 to 2000, 59% were won by those big 5. And then 2001 to 2024, 90% of all trophies have been won by those same 5 teams. Overall, 61% of all trophies in 75 years have been won by Chelsea, United, Arsenal, Liverpool, and Manchester City. A crazy amount. And this is where we're kind of just going to focus now on Daniel Levy's tenure a little bit more specifically, because there are some nuances, right? Between 2001 and 2012, there was no FFP in place in the Premier League. Abramovich arrived in 2002, and Chelsea, their spending explodes almost immediately. There was no rules. He came in and said, I'm doing things differently here. Succeed or you're out, basically. Sir Alex Ferguson was still near his very best for the most part of the early part of that period. Arsenal were still very strong early, but they had to sell their best players to afford the stadium debt that they moved into at the Emirates, and so it was actually incredible. This is where I hate this. I've said it 1,000 times. The biggest respect I can pay to Arsenal or to Arsene Wenger is the fact that he managed to maintain his success towards the end of his tenure, despite the fact that they had to sell the vast majority of their talent in order to pay for, and they had shrinking transfer budgets and all these other things to pay for the stadium debt and to make ends meet in that regard. And this is why one of the most key figures, when we're trying to figure out why it is that Tottenham doesn't win trophies anymore, not only do most other teams not win trophies anymore, but one of the biggest absence that we have had, even despite the fact we've moved to the new stadium and now our revenues are circa in the same ballpark as everybody else's in that top 5, which has been no mean feat, by the way, to close that gap. And I think he does deserve credit on that regard. But where Daniel Levy has absolutely screwed up is the fact that most of the other big 5, and if you go all the way back over the previous 75 years, the teams that had pockets of success, like Nottingham Forest in the middle 25 year, Matt Busby, going back from Manchester United, teams like Wolverhampton Wanderers, their manager, will come to him in a minute, I think his name's Cullen. These teams that had pockets of prolonged success in whichever generation we're looking at, the overarching narrative is that there's always a legacy leader, a figurehead, a Jurgen Klopp, a Pep Guardiola, an Arsene Wenger, a Sir Alex Ferguson, a Brian Clough, a Matt Busby, in Tottenham's case, obviously, what's his name? Bill Nicholson. There you go. How can I forget that? Bloody memory. Time for another slurp of cider. Let me just checking on the... Did you study economics in university? I did actually, yeah, economics and investment management, yeah. See the wood through the trees, Sean. Not sure what that means. But good evening to everyone. I hope this isn't too boring for you guys. I hope this is at least somewhat insightful if this is what you're interested in. Might not be for everyone. Now let's move forward to 2013 to 24, the sort of second half of that particular period. Arrival of FFP in 2013 that was entirely ignored by some, adhered to by others, zero enforcement, and essentially there's been very little enforcement to this day. I think the first time we're really seeing any enforcement was against Forest and Everton last year, and we'll hopefully see if Manchester City and Chelsea get any of their day in court or whatever, bearing in mind that Chelsea, for what it's worth, we're not just thinking that they're guilty of things now under Todd Bowley. You go all the way back to Roman Abramovich at the 2013-14 period, and they got away with when he gave all that money to Maria Zakharova, I think her name was, who was his sexy PA, who was buying property around Chelsea apartments, all that stuff, and it was all paid off the books, right? It was all a way to get down their sort of spend, their wage structure, spend all that sort of stuff. And in the end, Chelsea just had to pay a little fine, cheeky fine for it. It was irrelevant. The fine was less than the money that they should have reported in the overspend on their books, but they got away with it. I need to have a shave. I got itchy under the nose. Anyway, let's get back to this. Uncontrolled spend pre-FFP and manipulated revenues during FFP allowed Man City to join the traditional Big Four at the top. Since 2012, there's been 12 league seasons. Manchester City have won 8, Chelsea have won 2, Leicester and Liverpool. Right, so this shift towards like fewer and fewer teams were at the highest end, at the most prestigious trophy. The Premier League's more difficult than the FA Cup and the League Cup. In the last 12 years, 10 of the 12 victories. Obviously, now we've got Liverpool again for the second time recently, but 10 of the last 12 years have been won by Manchester City and Chelsea. And those guys were barely sort of dots on the radar in the 50s to the 2000 period. It's only because of the money in football, the rules that weren't enforced, that allowed that sort of thing to materialise. And that's forever shaped the game. The gap has been cemented. As I say 1,000 times, the door was closed after the horse bolted. And if you're trying to catch the horse that's out there and you're stuck in the stables because of the rules didn't apply to them, allow them to accelerate and to command and cement themselves where they are. And even to this day, they still are not facing the consequences. At least, well, we'll find out. We'll find out very soon, won't we? The day in court, whatever it is, will be announced very, very soon. Look at 10 out of the last 12 seasons have gone to 2 teams. Crazy, right? Liverpool and Leicester being the other 2. what's that say on there? 21 trophies from 42 have been won by sugar daddy money launderers. There you go. 21 trophies, this is including the League Cup and the FA Cup. 21 out of 40, so 50% of all trophies that could have been won in the last 11, 12 years have been won by Chelsea or Manchester City. Quite crazy. And those teams were nowhere to be seen. So this notion that money is not an influence in why Tottenham don't win success is crazy. This notion that it's just all about Tottenham and Daniel Levy and look internally and just worry about that stuff is crazy. Yeah, I'm sorry. I know people don't want to think about that stuff. You can blame Daniel Levy for being the problem within Tottenham, and that's fine. That's a whole different argument. But even if you fix the problem as you see it within Tottenham, it doesn't mean that any of the things that have been influential outside of Tottenham get fixed at any particular point. That's the only point I was trying to make, and the only point I have been trying to make since I've been in the Tottenham community. And yet, as a result of bringing those facts and stats, I get called all the names under the sun. You know, I actually someone left a comment on one of my videos earlier saying, if you don't stop talking about Daniel Levy and defending him, I will. What was it? I'll be calling for a meeting, and I will splatter you all over the pavement like margarine. Lovely people. I laughed because I don't like margarine. I'm a butter guy. So come on, get it right. Anyway, I think I've pretty much flogged to death now this notion of the kind of trophy success. I hope the point has been made. Right, I've got more data, more statistics. Obviously, you guys can take this if you want these slides. If you guys ever want to use this stuff, just let me know. I'll put them in some shared Google Drive or something, and people can add to it, can run with it. There's, like I said, it's 50 odd slides here, but let's move on. Oh, well, the last thing I wanted to say to you was I've kind of tiered up the different winners of trophies over the years and sort of added based on the amount of success that they've had. So of those 212 trophies that were available, those Man United, Liverpool, Man City, Chelsea, Arsenal have won 61% of the 212 trophies available since 1951. The second tier that I would consider like that next bulk of successful teams, Tottenham, Villa, Wolves, Everton, Forest, Leicester, and Leeds have won 47 of the 212, so 22%. Tier 3, fewer and fewer victories. They've won 3 or 4 trophies each since 1951. Newcastle, West Ham, and West Brom, they've won 5%. Tier 4, these guys have won 2 trophies in their entire history since 1951. That's Blackburn, Ipswich, Norwich, Birmingham, and Derby, 5% as well. And then the rest there is 16 trophies split across whatever that is, 16 odd teams, and that counts for 7%. Only won once, never won it again. So again, you can see the slant and the slide of how success goes in which directions, and ultimately success breeds success. Success allows you to get more money, and look, there's a lot of kind of, for me, rationale to say that money is the root of all evil in football, and it started really. Didn't start in 2001 when Abramovich came in. It actually probably started in 1991 when the Premier League came in and expanded the broadcasting from BBC and the old ITV towards Sky Sports, and then that was the start of everything. And we're going to go through that now. I'm conscious of the time, guys. I don't want to take up too much of your time. So that's basically the kind of the nuts and bolts of the top 10. I think that is teams in terms of success distribution. Now, money in football, right? This is the thing I've been talking about so much. Here's the kind of the slant here. So in the early 1950s, no team dominated the early 50s, with Spurs, United, Arsenal, Wolves sharing the spoils. 1955, the European Cup launched. Football explodes across Europe, starts to get attention and eyeballs on the game. Late 1950s, United, under former Liverpool player Matt Busby and Wolverhampton Wanderers, dominated until the 58 air crash. Then in the 60s, Liverpool and Shankly, Man United and Busby, Tottenham and Bill Nick, they were the three big figures. Remember I was saying, I'll be coming to this in a minute, the need for a figurehead, the need for a captain of the ship that is football first, that understands exactly what his club needs because it's in his DNA. He lives and breathes it. And unfortunately, because of money in football, that sort of figurehead is going to be less and less likely going forward, because in order to become a figurehead, you're likely going to have to go through some trials and tribulations as a member, as a manager, as a coach, as a whatever you are, a director of football of the football team, and you're just not afforded that amount of time like you were back in the 50s, 60s, and 70s. Back then, everything moved at a slower pace. There was more tolerance for imperfection. There was more of an allowance for failure. Doesn't happen anymore. That's one of the reasons why I think Ange Postecoglou is naive to think that he's going to be afforded 2.5 years to get his message across. If your message hasn't been landing after 18 months, then there's something wrong with the message, because it's either too complicated or the players are too inept, or maybe the message is just wrong. But in any way, you're 18 months in and that you've already surpassed the average tenure of what managers get. But that in itself is a problem for me, because if you want the success, it's not just about money. It's about legacy. It's about letting someone grab hold of what their football club can be, is, and will be, and let them kind of figure it out. But you have to have a hell of a lot of trust, and they have to have a hell of a lot of loyalty. And those are words that are very, very rarely mutual and reciprocal in the world that we live in anymore. It doesn't work that way, but the absence of it makes finding consistent, sustainable success even harder. 70s, Liverpool and Paisley, Forest with Clough, Derby and Leeds were very, very strong. 80s, you saw Liverpool come alive with Paisley, Dalglish. They dominated with alongside Arsenal, and Everton were really strong. And then before 1991, I've got here, much less money in football. United, Liverpool, the biggest teams, but money wasn't so unevenly distributed. Success was required figureheads and leaders, or success required figureheads and leaders. Then came the Premier League. Premier League deal to expand past the BBC ITV in a £40 million deal in 1991. Basically, I'm not going to go through all this stuff here, guys. You can see it on the screen. In a nutshell, money goes up, TV money goes up, deal after deal after deal after deal goes up and up and up and up and up. The best teams at the time that were getting the biggest share of the broadcasting deal were getting it because they were getting the biggest share of the TV space. Manchester United, massive beneficiaries of that. They still to this day, even though they're no longer the big team that they once were in terms of like success on the pitch, and you know, they're not considered, I don't think, to be as monster as they were in the 90s. But the timing, luck, half of timing is luck, half of life is timing, and the other half's luck. A lot of these things were beneficial to these guys, and City and Liverpool and Arsenal and Chelsea and these teams were the beneficiaries because they were successful as the money exploded, and they were getting the lion's share of the kind of the watch time on TV, as the internet wasn't here yet, as streaming wasn't here yet, as you know, getting links and black market stuff, none of that stuff was here until 2005, 2007, 2008, 2010. So these guys were all benefiting from these massive deals. And look at the inflation, look at the amount of money. 2001, TV deal was 1.2 billion. 4 years earlier, 670 million, doubled the money. Right, 2007, it's 1.7 billion. 2013, as FFP got brought in, 3.08 billion. Then 4 billion in 2018. And in 2023, they've just gone for 6.7 billion. And the likelihood is that in 2028, there'll either be a £10 billion TV deal, or possibly, depending on whether or not this has been struck yet, I don't know, there might be something that happens either 2028 or 2031, the Netflix for sport. And when that happens, all bets are off. It's going to be 30 billion, 40 billion pound deals, you know? So, but at that point, it gets evenly distributed because everybody can watch every stream. So there's not going to be Man United or City or Chelsea that are getting more than Tottenham or Leicester or whoever else, because everyone can watch every game. But for that to change, you first of all have to get rid of this Saturday blackout stuff, which is an archaic system that shouldn't exist anymore, but it does. Anyway, so money in football, right? Between 2010 and 2020, which represents the true rise of the super clubs alongside the huge rise in money. This is across Europe now, not just in football. But here's what's happened since the money in football has come in. Look at these stats and recognize that it's about a smaller number of teams that dominate, not just in their domestic league, but in the cups in their own league as well. So we had a second Spanish treble in that particular 10-year period, a first German treble, a first Italian treble, a first English domestic treble, 3 French domestic trebles in 4 years, a first Champions League 3 in a row in 42 years, the first ever 100-point season in Spain, Italy, and England, invincible seasons in Italy, Portugal, Scotland, and seven other European leagues. 13 of Europe's 54 leagues currently seeing their longest run of titles by a single club, or longest period of domination, and the first four-peat in the Premier League in 2024. And there was another English treble in 2023. Again, domination to the point of exhaustion by a very small number of teams. The money goes into a few hands. They dominate. They create command success, and it becomes a self-fulfilling cycle. Distribution isn't even, and therefore equality and an even playing field is not possible because of the timing and the luck and the explosion of interest in European football at the same time as certain teams that were benefiting then are still benefiting now. It's a chicken and the egg. It's a tail wagging the dog scenario. It's not ideal, but it is what it is. But it does explain why certain teams win everything and other teams don't. I want to show you a few other things here, guys, just to give you some more insights into some. I think it's interesting data. Let me know, guys. Look, there's 250 people here. Smash a like button if you're interested in this stuff. I appreciate it. It's not for everybody. If it is for you, smash the like. If it's not for you, smash the like anyway. And let me know in the comment section if this sort of thing is something that's interesting too. And we're saying it. Juventus were cheating, Barcelona were cheating, City and Chelsea were cheating. 100%, mate. This is the point I was saying. Why don't I factor this in? That's exactly what I'm factoring in. Not only were they beneficiaries of all that money, but they also had obscene wealth, and the rules, as you'll come to see it in a minute when you say I haven't factored it in, it is because one of the factors that I've said is that requires success. Internally, you need a figurehead. You need to have financial wealth. You need to have a youth system. There's a common denominator of successful teams is a successful youth system, a conveyor belt of talent. And also you need to have rules that actually have teeth and that actually are embedded and enforced. And in the absence of it, allow for certain teams, usually the most successful teams, to get away with murder. Here's 2 slides here. I won't dwell on it too much, but just to give you an idea, though, that there's a lot of people that bang on about Daniel Levy saying we don't spend enough money. I personally say that we have the stadium has been a game changer. We've, the 5 years before we moved into the new stadium, we had an average spend of £15 million a year. Since we've moved in to the new stadium, we have an average spend of £115 million a year. So like a 4.5, 5 times increase in that 5-year spread before and after 2019. And so I think we have caught up, but at the same time, for what it's worth, there is this idea, and this is just looking at transfer spend. It doesn't include salaries. It doesn't include agents' fees. This is just a transfer spend. Forgive me, I would have built this out further to look into the salary caps and all that stuff as well. But as I say, can't do everything, right? But this is just, I think, some interesting insights here. Let me get rid of myself one more time. The idea that the team that spends the most usually wins the league. Sometimes it's true, sometimes it isn't. And on these 2 graphs here, from 1993 all the way through on the next shift, so it's three different pages, 93 all the way up to 2024. What I've got is the team that spent the most on transfers, net spend the highest that particular year. How much did they spend? Where that team finished, and then who actually did win the Premier League that particular year, and then how much did they spend in that particular year. I'm not going to dwell on this too much because otherwise I'll be here for 2 hours or whatever. But in a nutshell, you can see at the top line, Blackburn. This is back when Jack Clark was his name? Forget the guy's name. Who was on a monster spend to try and get his success. He ended up getting it, but Blackburn Rovers were ruined financially because of it. Everton, Newcastle, United, Liverpool, Leeds, United, Man United, Chelsea as Abramovich came in. 120 million. Let's look at Chelsea. 120 million that year. 95, 55, 56. Where did they finish? Well, they finished second, first, second. Liverpool spent the most in 2008 and finished 4th. United actually won in that year. Didn't spend that much less, but did spend something less. City then comes along, right? Abu Dhabi Group. City 2009, City 2010, City 2011, Chelsea 12, Chelsea 13. Did they win? They didn't. In those particular years, the team that spent the most finished 5th, 3rd, 6th, 3rd, and 6th. Tottenham spent the most in 2014, believe it or not, for £109 million. Finished 6th that year. Manchester City and Manchester United and Chelsea were the beneficiaries of the actual championship. And they didn't spend that much less, but they did spend less. And as you move forward, as you can see there, same old names, right? United, City, Chelsea, Arsenal are the teams that spend the most. Don't always win. 4th, 4th, 3rd, 1st, 1st, 4th, 2nd, 10th. In the case of Chelsea, 8th, and then 6th. Love to see it. But the winners were, apart from Leicester, Chelsea, City, Liverpool, City. So, again, lots of data. Don't want to bore you. Let's move on. 8 times in 33 years. This is the summary of that stuff, by the way. 8 times in 33 years did a non-Big 5 team spend the most on transfers. Tottenham being one of those. Six of the 8 times were in the first 6 years of the Premier League. So way back when the money was smaller, less consequential, teams like Blackburn, etc. But all 8 failed to win the league. And only 5 times since 1993 has the team that has spent the most money on transfers ended up winning the title that season. Massive stat, right? Really, really interesting stat, I think. Only 5 times in the history of the Premier League, essentially, has the team that spent the most ended up winning. Doesn't mean that the team that finished second didn't end up winning and there wasn't that much difference, but just as an overarching stat, I think it's quite powerful. Why is that? Well, the gap between the spenders and the championship and the champions was too big, potentially. It takes time for new players to settle in, possibly. Part of an overall new managerial project takes time, or maybe they just spent badly. That's what I've got down as my rationales. Let me know what your thoughts are on why that happens. 22 times from 33, the team that spent the most money on transfers ended up minimum top 4, which gets you into the Champions League, which will earn between 30 to 100 million, depending on the progress you made. So the overarching thesis there is, if you spend the most, even if you don't win the league, the chances are you can reach for the stars, but land on the moon. You'll be back in the Champions League next season anyway, and then you're going to get, naturally, as a consequence of that, the revenues from that competition, which allow you then to go on and spend again, and hopefully have a second crack of the whip and go again. So spending the most money doesn't mean you're going to be successful, but it more than likely means you're going to end up there or thereabouts, and at the very least, you're going to end up in the Champions League, where you're going to get most of your money back, not necessarily all of it, but some of it. Where are we up to now? Chelsea spend the most 10 times. They only won 2 league titles in the same year, right? So in the year, so they spent the most 10 years in that since 1993. Only twice did they win the league. City spent the most 7 times. Only twice did they win in that same year. United spent the most 4 times. Only twice did they win the title in the same year. Liverpool spent the most twice and didn't win the league in either situation. Arsenal spent the most once, didn't win it. Newcastle spent the most 3 times, didn't win it. Tottenham spent the most 1 time, didn't win it. I don't know why there's overlapping there. Something else spent the most. Everton spent the most 1 time, didn't win it. Blackburn spent the most 2 times and didn't win it. And I can't see what else was underneath that writing. I apologise. Let's look at how else money is spent, guys. Chelsea, 407. Again, this doesn't include this last summer transfer spend or details around the trend. Chelsea, 471 transfers since 2001. 2.16 billion euros spent, and they got 13 trophies for their efforts. Manchester City, 409 transfers, 2 billion euros, 17 trophies for their efforts. United, 316 transfers from 1.78 billion, 15 trophies. Liverpool, 369 transfers, 1.5 billion, 9 trophies. Arsenal, 317 transfers, 1.3 billion, 9 trophies. Who's underneath me? Everton, 300 transfers, 870 million euros, 0 trophies. And Tottenham, 407 transfers, as many transfers as Manchester City, 60% of the spend. We've won 1 trophy, and Manchester City have won 17. What does that tell you? I don't know what it tells you. To me, it tells you we're terrible at spending money. I think we are terrible at spending money. The payoff isn't there, or hasn't been for us. It's not good enough, right? But then at the same time, what else is there? You know, are there other things at play here? Let's get rid of me again. I've done that already, haven't I? Yeah, I've done that one already. I'm not even going to read that. It's boring. I think it's essentially the all trophies takeaway. Yeah, look, I think I'm basically saying that money exploded in 1991. It went in a certain few directions. There were lots of cheating going on, but ultimately the richest teams got richer, spent more money. For the most part, those that spent the most didn't necessarily win, but they got into the Champions League and they could spend again. They did get rewarded for the most part with trophies. Tottenham spent a lot, didn't get anywhere near as much. But Everton spent a lot and are almost now bankrupt. So Daniel Levy is kind of good at keeping it together, but at the same time is terrible spending it. If only we could have someone that could spend money better, then we would possibly have closed the gap and got to far more success over the last 20 years. However, that said, as I said before, the teams that win trophies become fewer and fewer and fewer over time. and money has a lot to do with that. However, there's other things. There's other things, guys. Academy strength and usage, and as I said, a side leader with authority and autonomy. I'm not going to bore you with all the revenue stuff here. I'll be gobble it up. But if you want to look at this stuff afterwards, guys, let me know. Like I say, that I can put the slide somewhere if anyone's interested. Liverpool's success, right? Let's go back to Liverpool's success. Successful periods dotted throughout history, consistently in the 70s and 80s. They always had figureheads: Shankly, Paisley, Dalglish, Klopp. Youth academy supplements always contributed. At every period in that history, they've always had youth talent coming through, supplementing their real talent, their people that they bought, and have always been a massive conveyor belt of success that has kind of garnered and harvested that kind of mentality, which is also a massively important thing, a winning mentality, a culture of winning. Very important. The club nearly went bust in 2010. FSG saved the club, but Klopp was the day-to-day runner. As money arrived via Abramovich and the Sheikh, league title success was absent until 2020 as a one-off. Comparable success muted, but still present via cups. Success re-emerged recently because of Jurgen. Arsenal's success. Arsene Wenger said in 2005, we won the FA Cup. And in 2006, we played the Champions League final. I think the bigger factor was moving to the Emirates in 2006. That was the rupture with our financial potential. He's saying we kicked on when we finally moved into the stadium. And I think he's also been, I'm not sure if it says it here. Let's say today, when I look back at it, I think it was really unfair to be handicapped and to sell our best players to our opponents in England because there was no financial fair play situation. But we were consistent at the top after that and twice came close to winning the championship again. I always accepted to suffer in that period, though, because after the Emirates was paid, Arsenal would come back to compete with everybody at the same level. I always fought for financial fair play, and today we are back to compete with everybody else at the same level. And you can see that in the league table. He said that recently. He said that last year, I think. But he's reflecting on the things that he had to go through. Now, look, he managed to keep them competitive throughout that period, and fair play to him because, like I said, and like he's saying, he had to sell all their best players to a lot of their rivals, Chelsea and that, to maintain their sustainability, to pay off their debt. But they got through all that. It took them 8 years to win a trophy after they moved into the Emirates, by the way, in case you didn't know. And they got through that period, and now they're kind of reaping the rewards. Plus, they've got the Kroenke family guy who restructured the last bit of that debt, added a little bit more within the rules, and then allowed them to kind of spend a little bit of money like the Declan Rices. But Tottenham will be there, guys. Tottenham will get there. We will be there. At some point in the next 2 or 3 years, I'm certain that we'll spend £100 million on a player. I just don't know what £100 million will get you in 2 or 3 years' time. It might get you, Brennan Johnson. But they went through it. We're going through it. The financial stadium is going to be the transformation. And it has already proven to be. It's just a case of whether you spend the money right. Arsenal have always had a better track record, generally speaking. Not always, depending on if you speak to a lot of Arsenal fans, they'll tell you that's not the case. But look, their success speaks for itself. And fair play to Arsene Wenger for doing it without cheating, organically. And as much as it kills me to say it, that kind of was the template, right? But he's that figurehead. He's the leader. He's the guy who's, the Bill Nicholson of Arsenal. And my God, it would be great if we had our own version of it in the current setup. I've done that one. United success. Sir Alex Ferguson, right? Basically, the part of the big four as money arrived. The timing was fantastic for them. The stadium, then the brand, everything else. I'm going to scoot through, guys, because there's not that much more, but I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Chelsea's success, we know why. Wealthy owner buys the club before FFP, spends $1.5 billion, gets it written off because of the Europa, because of the war in Russia and that, and obviously, coming at the top only gets to sort of continue that vein. But they failed so far in that regard. But we'll see what happens. I also think they've cheated, to be honest, and we'll see what happens. But they also have spent a hell of a lot of money. They realise that the value of going after the youth system. It allows you to get players in that don't count against your 25-man squad. It allows you to sell those players later, where you can amortize the outlay, but you can take the income straight onto your book, which allows you, again, to kick the can down the road. Lots of shenanigans, lots of clever manipulation of accounts and rules and laws to be able to spend money. And they've got an owner that has a kind of reckless disregard because they're used to spending billions and billions and billions in the private equity world. It's not a big deal to them to look at that and think and have a different relationship than someone like Daniel Levy does, that's kind of used to growing up organically and sustainably. You're not wasting my time, my man. Oh, cool. As long as people are enjoying it, I hope that's nice. It's nice to see. Nice to see. Anyway, we know Chelsea's story. We know Chelsea's story. And we know City's story, right? Pep Guardiola is the figurehead there. They buy all the youth talent and they loan them out. And every single youth player that they've got so many youth players out on loan that are playing for top draw teams all over the country. And most of these players have sell-on fees. They just keep topping up the balance sheet, keep topping up the books. Every time, a big name gets linked somewhere, how often do we hear it in the press? Oh, Man City, are going to get 10% of that or 20% of that or whatever, right? So all of the successful teams, Liverpool back in the 80s, United in the 90s, Chelsea now and in the last 5 years, but Manchester City since the Sheikhs came in and set up the City Football Group, they have all had a massive focus on youth, whether it's to supplement the first team, if necessary, whether it's a way to bring in revenue for the team in a different sort of structure, whether it's a way to loan players out and then get the kick-ons down the road, whether it's a way to just manipulate FFP, that I said already, you buy players that you can amortize, and when you sell those players because they're under 21 or whatever, then you can, if they're homegrown, then you can bring on the revenue straight onto the books. Very, very clever. It's a necessary part of the success makeup, what leads to success, and something that Tottenham have been terrible at over the last 25 years. And Harry Kane, Ollie Skip, Harry Winks, there's not many. Sol Campbell, Ledley King. There's not a huge amount of success stories, even if you call some of those guys successes. A few of them you would. But look, we've clearly put a massive amount of investment into the youth setup. Johnny and Dave always talk about our own class of 92. And I think that we're going to start to see the benefits of that. Jamie Donnelly doing wonderful things out in Leyton Orient, right? You've got Alfie Devine maybe not doing so good over in Westerbo or whatever it's called. Voskovic, we brought that kid in super young. Obviously, Mikey Moore coming through. We've got half a dozen players still that are knocking around. George Abbott and the like. Will Lancashire, right? I won't bore you. You guys all know the names. But we've got a huge amount of youth talent out there. Not all of them are going to make it, but some of them will make it at Tottenham. Most of them, I'd imagine, will just be potential options to sell on and sell them to clubs who need homegrown numbers as they mature past 21. And then we can get the real juice. And that stuff isn't happening yet because it's still too early. 2-3 years time, though, you're going to see that effort, that workload and that investment hopefully start to yield just like they're doing at Chelsea, just like they have done at Manchester City, and just like the boys of a successful period in the past in terms of Manchester United and Liverpool have always been incredibly, incredibly successful at. So successful teams all have a youth team that is strong. They all have an ability to spend money, access to more money than 98% of competition when they need it. Obviously, ruthlessness with big player decision-making is something that we're terrible with. We don't sell players when we want to. We sell players when we have to, and we don't get any money when we do want to sell them. And a club figurehead, right? So important, guys. So important. It's a common denominator across all of successful teams, and including Tottenham. Our successful period, Bill Nicholson, right? It was his club. This is just a little graphic that I put up that summarizes it. Conveyor belt of youth academy, financial resilience and superiority, footballing figurehead, culture of a cultural approach and a winning mindset, which again we don't have. We get to all these finals and semi-finals and then it goes. Even the best players we've ever had in our lifetime, Harry Kane, you wouldn't really call them big game players when it comes to finals for England or for Tottenham, even for Bayern Munich, I guess. And so there is a massive kind of dearth of that success breeds success. We need to find a way to get there, and that's why some of these trophies, even if we were to qualify for the Conference League next year, if we manage to turn around our league form, and even if we just qualify for the Conference League, I think that sort of tournament would be so brilliant for Tottenham to go on and win, because it all starts somewhere, and we're so starved of it for so long that the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, right? And I think you need, from little acorns, from little seeds, big acorns grow. Is that big oak tree? No, from little acorns, big oak trees grow. Like, that's what I'm trying to say. That's what we need. We need just a bit of success, whatever it looks like, wherever the trophy is. Audi Cups don't count. We need something bigger than that to create that cultural approach, that winning mindset. And Daniel Levy needs to do better to be able to embed that, because he is ultimately the guy at the top. I don't think he's the guy at the footballing top, but we need someone. If he wants to step out, then let someone else step in that is an absolute champion, an absolute monster. It doesn't even have to be necessarily the manager. It could be the director of football. It could be a Paratici. Let someone live and breathe Tottenham. But that requires loyalty from both sides. It requires the guy to be loyal, to stay at Tottenham when his success commands a bigger slice, a bigger opportunity, and it requires loyalty from Tottenham to stick with the plan if you have faith, even when things are going wrong. And unfortunately, as I said earlier, in 2024, loyalty, faith, trust, patience, they're bygone words of a bygone era that are not afforded to most people anymore. And it's a shame, because I think that is the key ingredient. And the absence of that brings it back to things that are slightly more transactional, like how much money, how clever are you at getting around the rules? And ultimately, guys, it becomes a race to the bottom that I don't think Tottenham will win, because we don't have the wherewithal. We haven't got the intelligence as a football club. We don't even have the ability to kind of do the dark arts on the football pitch. And when it comes to the things that you have to do to be able to be wily and, you know, figure things out in the boardroom, or, you know, like what Chelsea did with Todd Boehly, right? How sneaky and clever are they with their lawyers to be able to figure out ways around the rules? We don't do that. I don't hate Daniel Levy for trying to work within the rules. I think it's, as I said before, I think it's like chastising the guy who came second in the Tour de France because Lance Armstrong was doped up to his eyeballs. You can shake hands with it and say everyone's cheating, so we should too. But I don't think you should hate the guy that's trying to do it the right way. I think you should hate the fact that the law doesn't have any teeth in it. But yeah, I think that one second. I think that the overarching narrative here is that we need something a little bit more than what we have. Money. Have we got any more slides? That's not important. Oh yeah, this was the kind of the figurehead details, right? So Alex Ferguson, 26 and a half years. Look what he achieved. Matt Busby, 25 years. 25 years. Can you imagine someone being at a football club for 25 years anymore? Arsene Wenger was there for 21 and a half years, from 96 to 2018. Brian Clough, 18 years at Forest. Stan Cullis at Wolves for 16 years. Bill Nicholson, 15 years at Tottenham. Shankly, 14 years at Liverpool. John Lyall at West Ham for 14 years. They had their successful period, and he was there at the time. 14 years, right? They didn't win like every single year, West Ham. They're West Ham, let's be honest. But they did, when they did have success, a lot of it was down to having that figurehead. So, like I say, guys, there's commonalities. And I agree with you, if you're just looking internally, and I'm going to get myself out of the way here just so I can show you the bottom of that. Jurgen Klopp, Jose Mourinho had an incredible amount of success at Chelsea, 3 years and then a 2-year stint, 5 years in total. David Moyes didn't have any success at Everton, but there you could make the argument that there, in recent years, that legacy, that sort of security, that blanket of sustainability was very ever present when he was there. When he left, Mashiri came in, things changed, reckless overspend. You might have, if you have someone that's in the club that's an ever-present part of the furniture that just understands what the club is about, how to converse with the fans, what this, you know, if we're moving to a new owner at some point, whether it's part owner, investment, whether it's something bigger, something more meaningful, and that guy comes in, if he's the sheikh of, I don't know, Sultan of Brunei or the sheikh of Kuwait, whatever, or if he's just a billionaire, Elon Musk, Amazon guy or private equity guy, these people aren't going to understand Tottenham. If Daniel Levy doesn't get the fans, then these people aren't, right? So having someone at the club who represents everything that this club is supposed to be, you can see the history of football, the history of success has been an ever-present part of the idea of a figurehead. That alongside youth, exuberance, a conveyor belt of talent, alongside money, resources when you need it, which I think we have. We will have continually now going forward, you hope. And on top of that, some rules that actually have teeth. They're the major reasons of why people have success. And Tottenham have some of the things in place. Tottenham have moved towards fixing some of the areas where they've screwed up over the last 25 years and before that. But for me, I think that there's obvious categories of gaps in our own portfolio, pardon the pun, of value. I don't know who that figurehead could be. I don't know whether it's like a David Pleat. I don't know whether it would be a Pochettino if he came back for a second stint and was allowed to have an extra 5 years and we built that thing. If it's not Ange, I don't know if it's a Fabio Paratici, if it could be someone in the director's role who can have that relationship where he talks to the owners and can talk to the managers, because let's be honest, managers don't really have that sort of tenure anymore. But for me, the absence, as I said a few times, the absence of that means that there's a higher focus on other things. And those other things are variables that often are outside of the control of the football club, like money in football. I hope that has not been too boring, guys. But I wanted to kind of sort of demonstrate to you that Daniel Levy might be a lot of things, but he is not in control of all of the recipe of what is and isn't dictating success in football. And that the trend goes from lots of teams, the distribution of success was in lots of different directions. And over time, it goes in fewer and fewer hands because of the distribution of success and access to money, and also those consistent things. If Tottenham want to close the gap, we need to fix a few little things and also make sure that we're still up there, and hope that the referees and the Premier League lawmakers actually come in and draw a line under this ability to circumvent rules and actually make sure there's a more of a level playing field. Otherwise, it will always be going in fewer and fewer hands and not in Tottenham's or other teams like Aston Villa, Newcastle, Derby, Leicester, Nottingham Forest, Newcastle, West Ham, Wolves, et al., who were very successful back in the day, just like we are, but no longer are. Can't all be Daniel Levy's fault. That's my presentation, and it took an hour and 30 minutes. Bang on. I thought it would. I'm really happy with that. How was it, guys? Was it terribly boring? I don't know. Any questions? Anyone want to kind of say anything? Let's have a look what we've got here. Can you talk about why you think we don't raise our wage structure? I think we will. I think we are going to. I would say that this wage structure thing has become a bit of a recency, opportunistic angle for people that want to go after Daniel Levy. I think that it's part of the reason why it looks like we've dropped 30 million euros from our previous wage structure or previous wage bill, is because Harry Kane left the club at the same time as Hugo Lloris, at the same time as Eric Dyer, as Ivan Perisic, and whoever else it was. There was probably like a Tanguy Ndombele. Tanguy Ndombele, by the way, that £30 million drop in the salary, well, 10 million of that wasn't dropped; it was paid off. It was paid off as a compromise, as a contractual fulfillment. So it's only really 20 million. If the original number was 30 million that was banded around, then it's really only 20 million. I think it was slightly more than 30. It must have been because, as I say, Perisic was on a hell of a lot. Hugo Lloris was on 100, Eric Dyer nearly 100, and Harry Kane obviously was probably on 200 or something. So I'd imagine more than 200 actually. If Tanguy Ndombele was on 200, then he must have been on more. But yeah, we replaced. Obviously part of that is back up with Timo Werner. Why? God knows. Well, that's such a shambolic move, isn't it? Absolutely incredibly. That's such a bad one. It's like one of the absolute worst comical decisions. To do it once is bad enough. To do it twice, insane. But that's obviously going to go. And then obviously you've got the same thing at the same time. We've been pivoting towards a youth-centric approach to transfers. And so you're not going to pay 18-year-olds 100 grand a week, are you? You're going to pay them 10 grand, 20 grand a week. But obviously we've done that now. We've got this youth-centric model. I would be surprised if we continue. Maybe there'll be one or two more 21, 22-year-olds that are coming in. But I'd imagine that they'd be at the top end of the 21-year-old bucket of market. People like maybe Dorgu or whatever, they're not going to come in on 20 grand. They'll come in on a lot more than that. Or someone like whoever, maybe that Kuzanov, if he's the guy. I don't know if he is the guy or not, but the 21-year-olds that we might be going after, they're going to be at the top end of the market, and so they probably wouldn't be on the sort of bottom end of the salaries like most youth players are that we've been going after. But I think that what that allows us for is this future that I don't think is very far away, where the revenue comes in, the debt is continuing to get paid down, and there's wiggle room on the wage structure to be able to then pay. When you don't need to buy 10 players like we have done for the last 2 or 3 windows, when you pretty much got the nucleus of the squad that you're looking for, and now it's about adding 1 or 2 bits of quality, like a top draw 6, a top draw winger, a top draw centre back if that's what we need, or whoever's left in the wheelhouse of Ange Postecoglou and Daniel Levy and Paratici's mind. I would imagine that we won't be far now, whether it's next summer or maybe it's the summer after. But I think that there will be a £100 million player at Tottenham. And I think there will be 200 grand a week, 250, 300 grand a week. Maybe not 300 grand a week. That's a bit of a stretch. But I don't think anyone's worth 300 grand a week unless your name is Mo Salah, to be entirely honest, or Kylian Mbappe. or maybe Sonny because of the amount of money he brings in, or the next Sonny or whoever, because of the amount of money that they can bring in to justify the outlay. But in terms of quality, how many people that get paid 300 grand a week have proven it? Like look at Casemiro at United. As soon as he gets paid that improvement, see you later, takes his check. What about Marcus Rashford? Horrendous. And you're lumped with these geezers for years, and no one else wants to take them on. And the player doesn't have to leave. Look at Ndombele, put his feet up, didn't care, right? He's never going to work hard because he doesn't have to. Once you sign that line, and so I think that Tottenham have been a little bit of once bitten, twice shy by that. I think also Daniel Levy doesn't like the idea of paying these salaries, but I think that there's a kind of consequence to now having the nucleus of the youth squad, and hopefully the club is going to pivot into some more senior players to sprinkle in for the final pieces of the jigsaw. And I hope that would also mean if you're going to pay 80 million for a Kolo Muani, then you're going to be paying 200 grand a week for him. Or if not him, how cool would it be to get, I know it's not going to happen, but an Omar Mamouche or even a Jonathan David, right? He's going to want big money. I know he's not coming from a big team, but he's going to be on a free transfer, I think, right? So he's going to want big money because someone else will pay it if not. And I make the argument that I think that Tottenham, Daniel Levy, if they continue in this vein of underpaying players, I'm with everybody that has a problem with it. But right now, I still think it's opportunistic to sit there and say the salary's been smashed downwards because Daniel Levy's trying to sell the club. If you think that that's the case, and you think that an investor is not smart enough to see that the wage structure is only down by 30 million this year because of a few players leaving, then God help you. Of course, they're smart enough to figure that stuff out. But for me, the natural reality is that we've been having a youth-centric approach to transfers that don't require too high wages, and then with all those big names leaving, that's the reason why it's been hit so much. But I think that now the time will happen where you're only going to need 2 or 3 players, hopefully, maybe 4, and then those players will hopefully be of a quality and hopefully also get paid good money so we can convince and compete. And that's the whole point. Hasn't happened yet. I don't know. Could be wrong. Usually am, but that's my sort of scenario on that one. If he gets the free Billy Pass, well, he could give his part of the club to his son, Josh, but more likely to sell and leave. No one is worth £300 per week. Exactly, mate. Exactly. Unless, like I say, unless you're bringing in 500 grand a week or a million pound a week in whatever your work is, right? People get paid a lot of money if they work, if they're the very best investment bankers or the very best lawyers, whatever. But if you're the very best lawyer in the world and you can keep a billionaire out of prison, then you're worth whatever you want to that guy, aren't you? Because that's the way it works, I guess. That's the kind of the way that the world turns, I guess. Not true, Sean. Levy doesn't do that. What's not true, Rob? Well, my thesis on salaries. Like I said, I don't think he's going to be spending 300-400 grand a week on players. The idea of signing like a Mo Salah, forget about it. But I think that there is a rationale to say that once you can't spend all this money and you can't do everything all at once. And we've got through the deadwood. I personally look at the squad that we have and the youth system, and I sit there and think we've got some brilliant talent. Brilliant talent. Players like Bissouma, players like Bentancur, not good enough. Players like Johnson, not good enough. Timo Werner. There's loads of players that we can improve on. But when I look at the youth, look at the players that are coming through, look at the 18-year-olds that we've bought, paid good money for in terms of cost, this nucleus, I think, is getting really strong. But Rome wasn't built in a day. And that's one of the reasons why I'm not on the Ange out train. Things might change. But for me, I just think that it's... Has my microphone been muffled the whole time, by the way? If it has, I'm really sorry. Sean spends 300 grand a year on brasses. Sometimes. Sensational. Only the top drawer ones, mate. Top shelf. Sometimes they're not worth it. Sometimes I go bottom shelf because they're more fun. Anyway. Boys and girls, I'm going to leave it there. Listen, if you are around in an hour and a half at 10 o'clock, I'm on Last Word on Spurs with obviously the wonderful Ricky Sachs, and we're starting our journalist transfer kind of roundup. And Ben Jacobs is first on the list, so I'm really excited about that to go and make my debut on that type of show. So yeah, get over to Last Word on Spurs at 10. Devil's Advocate is back on here tomorrow with Dave and Johnny, the old terrible trio, the trio of death. We're back at 1 p.m. UK time. And guys, if you are on Spotify, then check out Spurs Talk Show. Link in the description. All these stuff can be on there. So I don't know if when you want to watch this stuff on you kind of work or whatever, YouTube, you can't have the thing down, can you? And still listen to it, but you can on Spotify. So maybe that's your thing. Either way, Spotify's there. Like, subscribe, and comment. Let me know your thoughts on all I've gone through today. I hope it wasn't too muffled. I didn't realize the microphone had sunk inside there and was underneath my fat double chin. I hope it hasn't been ruined. Thank you very much, Blaine. Thank you very much, Callum. And I didn't even see this from Callum. Again, amazing effort, Sean. I really appreciate that. I hope it wasn't boring, guys. But like I say, there's more to the story than just one man's blame. There's loads of things going on outside of Tottenham, and they are influential. Doesn't mean we can make excuses. It means that we need to double down and figure out how to tap into those areas and improve. Responsibility on laws, lawmakers. We need to get the youth system right. We need a figurehead, or ideally someone that can convey what Tottenham is to the people that don't understand it in the boardroom, the ownership, managers, scouts, whatever. We need someone that's an ever-present part of the furniture, because that is an ever-present part of success as well. And we need money. That's it. Like, subscribe, and comment, guys. Love you all. Take care. Thanks again. Bye-bye.